Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I know we have participants from all over the world. It's also my pleasure to welcome you to our panel discussion. As Kathleen was saying, I'm a member of Giving Women. I'm actually participating from Zurich today. I'm Philippine Baron, I'm French and Swiss, and very happy to be part of the Giving Women community. Let me tell you a few words about Giving Women. Giving Women was founded now 11 years ago by Atalanti Moquet, that you can see here on the screen, and that many of you actually know. And 7 years ago, we also, so initially it was founded in Geneva. And as we were also a few based in Zurich, we also founded a chapter in Zurich 7 years ago. But we are truly a Swiss organization. And we even have now members from all over Switzerland, which make us quite, all over Switzerland and all over the world, which make us quite proud. Our motto is Women Empowering Women. Our mission is really to bring skills and tools to our members so they can empower other women in needs. And how do we do that? We do this through different ways. We have educational workshops, which helped our members to become informed philanthropists. We have also, we support projects that we select very carefully, and we offer the opportunity to our members to contribute to these projects, typically during 1 year. And also, very important, we bring awareness to our members on topics that we find very critical around women and girls. And we organize this panel discussion as we have today. And today, the topic is a very important topic for the work of Giving Women. It's the education of girls. And I'm also very pleased to have Linda as a moderator of our panel discussion. Linda is a long-standing member of Giving Women. She has also been helping us to grow the Zurich chapter. And Linda is also personally involved. She has been co-founding a very nice organization called Green Lump. So just on the logistic, don't hesitate already to start to put some question in the Q&A if you have things in mind you don't want to forget to ask, or if you would like us to already ask the questions. Otherwise, you can ask them at the end. And I hand it over to you, Linda.
Thank you, Philippine, and welcome, everyone. I'd like to begin with a little snippet of text from an Educate Girls notebook that was given to Philippine 7 years ago by Safeena, when Giving Women hosted Safeena and a breakfast for her in Zurich. That was quite a while back. A girl walking to school is a nation marching to its shining destiny. Today, in many parts of the world, schools are closed and not all children are getting to school, and least of all, girls. Before the pandemic, more than 130 million girls were already not going to school. And now it's estimated that because of lockdowns, at least 11 million more girls may never return to the classroom. So according to Plan International, the scale of this pandemic affects girls and young women in every aspect of their lives. Their safety, well-being, education, economic security, health, nutrition, and their access to technology. These are all pre-existing inequalities, which are simply exacerbated by the onset and the continuing COVID-19 crisis. So we know that 9 of the 17 SDGs are directly addressed, and SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals, are directly addressed by educating girls. This underscores the importance of the work of our 3 award-winning panelists and their NGOs. So welcome guests, welcome panelists, and thank you to Giving Women Zurich for this opportunity to discuss education in the time of COVID-19. Can tech keep girls in school? And we're humbled to have 3 stellar panelists here for you today. And I'm sure that each and every one of our participants is itching to know more about them, their NGOs, and the amazing solutions that they're implementing today thanks to technology and its rollout in India, Afghanistan, and the numerous other countries where they're all active to keep girls learning. So welcome, distinguished panel. And we'll begin with each of our panelists making a short introduction by way of an elevator pitch, and then we'll move toward more in-depth conversations with each of them. And then there will be a large opportunity for our guests and participants today to ask their questions. So let's begin. Valentina Di Felice is the head of Impact and Learning at the Womanity Foundation, and she has designed and is heading a program called Girls Can Code. And this is groundbreaking work that she's doing. It's a vocational training for girls in 4 public high schools in Kabul, Afghanistan. Valentina?
Hello, first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here. Well, just to tell you why I'm doing this work and why Womanity is working on girls' education in Afghanistan, I think I really would like to go back to my family values, because for me, education, and for me and for my sisters, education has been always an important, even a sacred value. And because for my family, it was the way to give us the opportunity and the means to have a voice in society. And they saw it as the cornerstone of freedom, self-determination, and empowerment. And this was, if I dig deeper in my family history, it was because my father couldn't enjoy a good education when he was in elementary school, and it was because of conflict. He was born just before the Second World War, and he couldn't go regularly to school. And this really speaks to me and really connects me with the work we do in Afghanistan, because children there experience the same challenges that my father experienced, and they cannot go to school regularly. So if we can help them really to get this opportunity to get their futures in the end, then I think we can really empower them, and we can help girls to live their own life in freedom, and they can be independent, and they can take their own choices and really have a voice in their society.
Thank you. Megan Fallon is the founder of Step Up Advisors and the Chief Impact Officer for Pioneering Ventures. She's also the board director and former CEO of the Barefoot College. And that's an organization that believes in the endless potential of the rural poor. And since 1972, they have developed women-centered programs wherever poverty exists. Megan?
Namaste and hello, everyone. Such a pleasure to see all these beautiful women's faces on the screen, which is rare for most of the times I speak about our work. And I am a very proud Giving Women founding member from many, many years ago. And so couldn't be more happy to be talking to you. We really are facing such an enormous crisis. I think it's hard for us as we sit possibly not in the developing world to really comprehend what that looks like right now. And it's a crisis that echoes the founding values of what Barefoot College built itself on, which was about justice and about inclusion and about a fair opportunity for everybody to participate, to be part of the solution, to be part of solving for themselves, and having the agency and the aspiration to actually move themselves forward where they want to go. So Barefoot's been a story about designing around what communities and around, in particular, in this conversation, what children have told us they needed to learn in very rural communities where a formal schooling option was not available. And so in the decade that we took on revitalizing a 35-year-old rural education program, we really looked at how do we create relevancy. Rabindranath Tagore has a great quote about not teaching children only the limitation of what we know, but thinking about the world they're born into, and thus what their education needs to consist of, and how it needs to be delivered, and what it needs to catalyze by way of discovery, creativity, and exploration, so that they can then leap into the relevancy of their own time. So that sort of sits at the heart of our moves to design around technology and the integration of technology by very remote, very resource stretched communities in ways that respond to their needs. So I think I'll leave it there and talk a little bit more later about how we've done that practically and why.
Thank you, Megan. Our final panelist that I'd like to introduce is Safeena Husain, and she is the founder and executive director of Educate Girls. And she's passionate about getting girls into school, keeping them in school, and improving the learning outcomes for all children in school. And in only 12 years, Educate Girls has brought over 750,000 girls back to school. Safeena?
Hi, thank you. First of all, I just have to say, like, I'm just so happy to be invited by Giving Women because, as you were mentioning, we met like 7, 8 years ago. We're old buddies. And I have found always a warm meal at Atlante's house. I have found such, what should I say, a network of women. Like, they kind of like always have your back. And whether I found donors through this Giving Women network, I have found supporters. I have just found people that I could bounce things off. And just in this journey of scale, I mean, we've scaled from 50 schools to today we work in 18,000 villages and over 2 million children daily. And it's not possible. They always say, like, for a child, it takes a village. For us, it's definitely taken a whole community of women kind of coming together and saying, we're here. What do you need? So first and foremost, I just wanted to say I'm really, really, really grateful that a network like this does exist, because believe me, nobody else is counting us. We need to count ourselves and make ourselves count. So in some way or form, I think, very grateful that you have this going. And I can't stress the value of such platforms and networks and the role they actually play in what we are trying to achieve. Having said that, I love that, Valentina. I didn't know that about your background, even though I've known humanity for so many years. But honestly, I think a lot of us get into this work because there is a hole we're trying to fill, and it's because of our personal experiences. And for me as well, I grew up in New Delhi. I grew up in extreme poverty, extreme sexual abuse, violence, you name it. And it was, a terrible childhood. I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But my education continued, however bad it was. My report cards always had red marks and attendance was irregular. And it was just really like kind of up and down, up and down. But, it just kind of persevered, and my circumstances changed, and I became the first one in my family to go overseas for college. And I became the first one. I went to London School of Economics, changed my life completely. And it is education. A rural woman had once said to me, she said, my education is what is truly my own. Nobody can rape it out of me. Nobody can steal it from my house. No flood can wash it away. It is the one true thing that is mine and mine alone. And once I get it, you can't snatch it from me. And it's such a powerful statement. And it does matter for all of us. We all have a voice, and we have where we stand today. And the fact that, there are doors of opportunity, but they're only visible many a times only if you are educated. So, from all of that, that's what really led me to starting Educate Girls. Started 12 now. We just had our Foundation Day celebration. So now it's like 13 years. And we're getting into our adolescence. We're becoming a little teenager-ish. But really, it started with 50 schools. Today, we work in 18,000 villages across Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and UP. I was really happy to look back and see some of the team members that started with us have built this organization and grown with us. My head of expansion is somebody who started with me when I was at the first early years. So 99.9% of the staff is from exactly the same villages. So it is a homegrown model. It is built brick by the people from the same villages and districts. We have 2,500 full-time employees, and we have 14,000 Team Balika volunteers who are young people who have joined us in this mission. 70% are young men, and uh, 70% are young women. We also have like a large number of boys, which we think is fantastic because boys and men really do need to stand up for equity as much. And our goal is to try and bring 1.5 million out of school girls in India back into school, which would make it about 40% of the problem of out of school girls in India. And that's an insane proposition for one small NGO that grew on the ground. But we have a key insight, and I'm going to give this insight because it's linked to the issue of tech, because we have data from over 4 million households in India. We have a prediction that says that 40% of out of school girls in India are in 5% of the villages, which makes it a huge, massive opportunity of our lifetime to wipe this problem off in the next 5 years. And that is what we are audaciously trying to do. But that I wanted to mention that because our topic today was, can technology keep girls in school? And this is really one of the, we feel data and tech will be one of the most important levers for fighting this, for this battle for equity.
A very audacious project indeed, I would say. So shall we continue with Educate Girls with a short movie just to see what it looks like in reality? Kathleen? I love the introductions, by the way.
आंधी और तूफान आता है तो सारे गांव को या उसके रास्ते में आने वाली हर चीज को अपने साथ में लेकर के जाता है। इसी प्रकार से अशिक्षा भी एक आंधी और तूफान की तरह काम करती है। एक मकान से लेकर के दूसरे मकान से लेकर के तीसरे मकान, इसी प्रकार से चलते जाती है और पूरा गांव एक अशिक्षा की बीमारी के समान होने लगता है। टीम बालिका के साथ मिलकर हमने जब डोर टू डोर सर्वे किया तो शिवानी नाम की एक बालिका मिली जो पिछले 2 सालों से शाला त्याग चुकी थी। शिवानी को स्कूल बैठाना हमारे लिए एक चैलेंजेस जैसा हो गया था। हम लोगों ने घर कई बार जाकर के प्रयास किया उनके माता पिता से मिलने का, तो पता लगता था कि माता और पिता दोनों मजदूरी के लिए चले जाते थे। शिवानी जब उसकी मम्मी के साथ में रहती थी तो स्कूल जाया करती थी। जब शिवानी की मम्मी की शादी बहादुर जी के साथ में हो गई तब अपनी मम्मी के साथ में मजदूरी जाने लगी और वो शिक्षा से दूर हो गई। उनकी माता से हमने पूछा कि आप शिवानी को स्कूल क्यों नहीं पहुंचा रहे हो, तो शिवानी की माता कहती है कि शिवानी मेरे साथ में मजदूरी करती है और मुझे पैसा कमा करके देती है। शिवानी के पिताजी का ये कहना था कि अब शिवानी बड़ी हो चुकी है और उसके साथ की जो बालिका है वो आगे की क्लास में जाएगी और मैं अपनी बालिका को अब शादी कराने के विचार में हूँ। हम कम से कम 5-7 बार गए, इतनी जल्दी नहीं मानने वाली थी, तो हमने समुदाय का सहारा लिया। शिवानी के पिताजी के साथ में कुछ लोग उठते बैठते थे जो उनके काफी करीब थे। समुदाय के साथ में और शिवानी के परिवार के साथ में बैठक की तो गांव में लोगों को ये बात समझ में आई। शिवानी के पिताजी को सबसे पहले तो स्कूल भेजने के लिए हम लोगों ने राजी किया। अब शिवानी स्कूल जाने के लिए तैयार हो गई और हम लोग शिवानी को स्कूल लेकर के गए। पूरा स्टाफ और वहाँ के प्राचार्य ने हम लोगों को काफी सहयोग दिया। शिवानी अब स्कूल रेगुलर जाने लगी है। स्कूल में जब शुरू जाती थी तो काफी झिझक होती थी और बोल नहीं पाती थी। स्कूल में लाइफ स्किल गेम की शुरुआत की और बाल सभा का गठन किया। शिवानी को हमने मीना बाल प्रेरक के रूप में चुना। अब शिवानी स्वास्थ्य के ऊपर बोलती है, शिवानी नेतृत्व के ऊपर बोलती है, शिवानी कैसे बोलना ये सिखाती है। और जब भी अब शिवानी स्कूल जाती है तो मानो कंधे से कंधा मिला करके पूरे बच्चों के साथ में चलती है।
A beautiful movie. Thank you for sharing that, Safeena. I'm Educate Girls just recently wrote on social media that COVID-19 has disrupted the right to education for nearly 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries. And it said it's worsened the pre-existing learning inequalities, especially for the marginalized and vulnerable communities in remote areas of India. A global pandemic which pulls girls out of school and has a detrimental impact on family income can only make matters worse. So can you speak to us about the measures that Educate Girls has taken or implemented to combat these inequalities, and how have technology and data informed your actions?
Yeah, thanks. First and foremost, I want to say that I do believe that the highest price of this pandemic will be borne by women and girls. And let's just be really clear on that. They are the ones who will bear the biggest price. And for a variety of reasons, like female labor force participation is dipping as we speak, because the first people you fire are the women workers, right? There's so much of that, and we will see this across the board. But especially the kind of areas we work in some of, and we use data to select these villages, some of the most poorest and most socially marginalized villages. That's where we are present. So everything that I'm going to speak about really comes from the lens of where my ground zero is. And my ground zero is literally the worst villages in the country from social marginalization and poverty. And what happens is that wherever you have these two meeting, I call it my two-piece, poverty and patriarchy, what you see is an explosion of out-of-school girls. So in the other villages, you might have like 5 out-of-school girls, whatever. In these kind of villages, you'll have anything from 50 to 100 out-of-school girls. That's the sort of explosion. So these are those kind of geographies. These are critical hotspot geographies that I'm speaking about. And here, what we have seen has really been hair-raising. It has been an absolute crisis. So first and foremost, we really, like, when the pandemic hit, and we had one of the strictest lockdowns, right? And we went and we thought about saying, if right now there's this lockdown, what is the impact on our girl? And the first thought that came to us was around hunger. And just think of it, just even around hunger, we felt like, we talked and we had these conversations, and we're like, our girl is probably the hungriest, because even in normal times, we know this in our homes, women and girls eat last. They first serve the food to everybody, they're cooking the food, they're serving the hot rotis or whatever it is, and they eat what is left over and they eat last. And so the lockdown, the pandemic, the sort of worsening of poverty is going to impact even in the fact that those girls will be the hungriest. So first and foremost, we wanted to focus on relief. So we delivered, and we were really lucky that our supporters were so fantastic. But overnight, we pivoted to delivering rations, and we delivered food supplies to over 500,000 people.
Wow.
And choosing them by saying, which is my village which is going to be most impacted, which is my household which is most vulnerable. So really doing precision targeting, because for all of us, our time, our money, our resources are limited, and we wanted to make sure that we were getting to. And it meant like hiring boats to get to some villages. It meant a lot of things that we had never done before, but which we did. And then also it was like not just like having food, but also like, raising awareness on how to protect yourself from COVID-19, raising awareness and connecting people to social protection schemes, just so that we could alleviate the poverty, and obviously tackling patriarchy, because patriarchy becomes much worse when this happens, especially in the lockdown. The men have come back, they're in the household all day, women's mobility is further restricted, they're just back into the gendered household roles day in, day out, where people then forget that this girl ever was in school or that she needs to be in school. So we really wanted to tackle that. And therefore we've now what we call our recovery phase, which is really we're running learning camps for over 100,000 children, which is at their doorstep in their neighborhoods. But from a variety of reasons, it's also from a protection perspective, making sure the girls are getting out of the house and they're getting to a safe space and we can see them. Because otherwise, when they get married, they'll disappear and we'll never know where these children vanished, right? So exactly to the point that you were making, the 11 million girls that may never come back, we're trying to keep the demand for education alive. And all of this, we're using a lot of data and technology. And then obviously now we're sitting at a point saying, okay, how will we reimagine the post-COVID world? And that's where some of our attention will go. But that's just to kind of tell you how our last year has really been and how we've thought about this.
And you use a lot of learning apps also to ensure curriculum content and so on. You use data to localize the girls, if I understood correctly. And you also have a private-public model that's proven sustainable over time. So has that model also helped you to develop technologies to assist and monitor learning?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown on where we are really using learning, right? And using technology. And it's really fascinating because we're not using it from an ed tech perspective. It's not plain vanilla ed tech, like you build an app and there's content on it and kids start learning and whatever. There's an ed tech model is like, I think for a lot of organizations. Our lens at that scale is slightly different. We're saying the questions we're trying to answer with technology is where are the most vulnerable out of school girls? And so all of this predictive analytic machine learning work is helping us to find those hotspots and to find those critical clusters where the highest number of out of school girls are. The second is we're saying once we find them, and we do this like our door-to-door surveys all on an app so that each village is geotagged, each household is geotagged. So I can build, heat maps very quickly on where the out of school girls are and who they are. And then I can allocate resources. If it's 100 girls here, it's 1,000 girls here, it's 10,000 girls. I need to make sure that there's adequate money and resources allocated to the problem based on the size of the problem. The second is when I have the list of all of these out of school girls from my door-to-door survey, I'm trying to figure out saying whose door should I knock on first? Because as you saw in the film, that girl was at risk of child marriage. I don't want to be blind to saying I have 1 million girls in my database. I actually want to very intelligently be like, you know what, Shivani's household, I should knock tomorrow because she's really at very high risk of child marriage, right? So how do I use data, technology, predictive analytics to really anticipate the need of the vulnerable girls and make sure that the services that she requires get to her just in time that she needs them. So we're really using technology to make sure that my field coordinators' work plans and how we're thinking, and that vulnerability index, almost like a rating.
Really interesting.
And so those are like some of the ways in which, and then obviously you can improve all of your programs using the elements of technology, but it is like, how do we find them? How do we make sure that we get to the most vulnerable? And how can we do preventive work rather than tackling the, the negative impacts once a child marriage does happen, then what do you do? So instead of doing that, really being much more proactive.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to just tell our audience that Safeena might be having to leave a little bit earlier today. And if you had any specific questions to her at this very moment, I would welcome a question. Is there anything in the chat right now, Philippine, by any chance? No. Okay, so we're going to move forward and we're going to speak with Valentina and move northwest to the countryside, from the countryside of India to an urban setting. We're going to move to Kabul, Afghanistan, and 85% of the girls in low-income countries do not complete secondary school, and which leaves them obviously disadvantaged, and the wider society and the whole economy worse off as well. So if every girl globally finished secondary school, the GDP of emerging economies would rise by 10%. Whole nations benefit when women gain rights. And so to change this, governments have to implement policies to protect girls' rights while working with NGOs, just like the Womanity Foundation, to challenge harmful societal gender norms and mindsets. So Valentina, tell us what you and the Womanity Foundation do in the context of Afghanistan.
Yes. So, well, we started working in Afghanistan in 2007, but we really changed our strategy in 2016 because we really wanted to have a niche of girls in Afghanistan, which was also the type of girls we could easily get access to, because access is an important element in a country like Afghanistan, where 60% of the territory is still under Taliban control. So we decided to really have our small niche program in Kabul, because we felt that Kabul was an urban setting, was more open-minded, and really more families were more open to enable girls to continue study, to go to university, and more importantly, to work. Because with the Girls Can Code program, we really wanted to create this bridge between education and labor market. And so we started working in 4 of the schools we were already working in before in Kabul. And we work with girls who are already in grade 10 until they reach graduation. And we train them in 3 critical skills: English, language, basic computer literacy, and coding. And then we do other things in parallel, such as workshop in soft skills, like how to write a CV, how to prepare for an interview. We organize meetings with role models, and we help girls to find internships, and also we provide scholarship for university if they want to get into computer science, because we really want to focus on the ability of girls to work and progress in the tech industry. And there are several reasons for that. One, there is a nascent tech industry in Kabul. And the other one is that in a situation, in a country like Afghanistan, it's very critical to think also at different scenarios. And one of them, especially now with peace talks with Taliban, is, are women's rights to continue to be as they are now, or there could be restriction to them? Are women able to go out and work, or they are going to stay home? So we really wanted to make sure that we were thinking through some other option for women in case their rights and their condition might be more restrictive and more limited. And with COVID, COVID was, I wouldn't say an opportunity, but really helped us to think through and to experiment new ways of delivering our work, because basically the academic year in Afghanistan starts in March, and basically when we were right starting our new activities in 2020, the lockdown started. And so we were kind of stuck for a few days on thinking how we can deliver our program, how we can make a difference for our girls. And it was really there that we decided, okay, we are teaching coding and web development, we are using technology, why don't we go online and we move all our classes online? And so we did that. We equipped girls with an internet connection. The ones who didn't have a computer, we were able, thanks to our donors, to buy and distribute laptops for girls who didn't have them. And we moved everything online. And it was quite successful, I have to say, because we had a very good attendance. We had very good results in the test of our trainings, but also we realized that we filled a gap even in COVID, because there was no other form of education for our girls during this time. There was a plan of the Ministry of Education of having classes in television, but it really didn't work in a smooth way. So like you could see from our students that this was the only way for them to continue to be involved in some form of education. And because of that, then we also worked with past students. We organized a workshop on advanced topic and languages in coding. We helped them to find online classes that they could attend remotely. So we really helped them to kind of stay connected to education and to learning. And of course, as Safeena was saying, the first problem with COVID and with the lockdown was hunger. So we were also able to do a quick survey of our schools and our students, and we helped them distributing. We identified the families that were more in need, so that we could also have distributing food parcels and basic equipment like mask and soap and sanitizers for them. So I would say that this was really an important moment for us, because probably for the first time, although in a country like Afghanistan might sound silly, like for the first time, we also were pushed to think even farther outside of our comfort zone, like really making sure that we could continue work even in the most difficult circumstances. So I'm very happy about it. Yeah.
So in a way, it's thanks to the pandemic that you've managed to devise these innovative solutions to keeping the girls in school by providing them with the technology that they need and the connections that they need in order to
exactly. And I would say that this is also a way for us to think at the future, because definitely if there are more restrictions for women, we might need to do some of our activities remotely. But this also is helping us to think even farther, like can we help girls and women to have work and work from home, maybe with companies outside Afghanistan? So how can we use technology even farther in our day-to-day activities?
So just another question to you, Valentina, in the context of Kabul, with safety and the peace process being so precarious, I would love for you to speak a little bit about the context of your courses, but a little bit more about that they're not only school in the classical way, but by giving the young women computers and connections, you're actually building a bridge to them. And it allows you to keep contact with them and their families. And so in your experience, has the channel that you've built to the girls allowed you to communicate on more sensitive issues with them, such as possibly sexual harassment, forced marriage, safety, bullying?
Yes, I guess in any country where you work, the access and the access to community is very important. And the way you build it is not only like directly with girls, but also with their families. So every activities we run in Afghanistan was always a mix of working with students, but also working with parents and communities. And the way we deal with sensitive issues has been always in a one-to-one way, because of course, for example, anytime we see a student who's not regularly attending our classes, we will connect back with the family, with the parents, with her, and try to understand what the problem is, but also try to understand how we can help parents to really be supportive of their girls and really see the perspective on the problem of their girls. For example, it could happen that there is plan for a marriage, then we connect with the family, we really understand if the family, we try to make sure that the family is taking in consideration the opinion of the girl, and also that the marriage can wait until the end of education. And we were able to succeed in a few cases. In other cases, I remember girls were telling us that they were harassed in the way to school by other boys. So basically, again, we had a community meeting, we spoke with the elders, so that then they took charge of speaking with boys and really making sure that this would not happen again. So we were able really, with the connection and with the access we have to the community, to solve some of these basic problems.
Yeah. I just had a question from the audience, Valentina, about how did you actually reach the girls? Did you use Zoom, or were there live sessions, or how did you teach?
Okay, yes. So basically, actually, we tested several tools, but at the end we decided to use Skype because it was the easiest way for them. We had created a directory of, we recorded all our classes, and we created a directory on Google Drive for classes and teaching materials, but classes were on Zoom. And also students are connected via WhatsApp with the trainers. So because probably the question is that there is, in Afghanistan, there are a lot of electricity cuts. So we needed to ensure that if a student couldn't go attend a class online, she could have the recording, but also she could be, let's say, followed and advised by the trainers. So the trainers also stayed available outside the training time to compensate whatever they missed during the training time.
Thank you. Philippine, you mentioned that maybe you had a question for Safeena.
Yes, but actually Safeena answered online all the questions to just that the one who have posted some questions online. Safeena answered all your questions, so don't hesitate to look at the chat. Safeena wrote to all of you some answers. So
well, that's technology helping us on our session here today. Thank you, Safeena.
thank you, Safeena.
So let's move to India, back to India again with Megan, and see a short movie about a school like no other. Kathleen.
I'm just getting that up on YouTube.
Thank you.
Millions of children in rural India are unable to attend a regular day school, either because of distance, the need for them to contribute to their family's subsistence, or social and cultural barriers. For 35 years, Barefoot College has sought to follow Mahatma Gandhi's dedication to reach the last man, which unfortunately is far too often the last girl. More than 75,000 children have passed through our education programs. We have long believed that rural children deserve quality rural education that is place-based, relevant, highly practical, and addresses the critical issues they face each day, like early childhood marriage and gender bias. An education that focuses on practical technologies and know-how which can translate to later economic success in a wide range of rural livelihoods. The Barefoot Solar Digital Night Schools are helping children left behind and left out by engaging entire communities in educating their own children and participating in the support and running of their own alternative learning centers. Transparency, accountability, and sustainable practices are at the heart of everything we teach. Using technology to level the playing field, we are helping children catch up and allowing them to integrate more successfully into mainstream schools. Creating empowering opportunities to develop their own content with other rural children across India. Everyone has the opportunity to share their wisdom, skills, knowledge, and cultures with others. This low-cost and low-impact solution, designed for and with the special needs of rural children at its core, is making a difference. Our children, after transitioning to government schools, are performing in the top 25% of their classes. More likely than not, they become teachers themselves, and they do not migrate to cities. It is no surprise that ignited, passionate learners become passionate teachers. Barefoot College, simple solutions at work.
Thank you, Megan. This was a gorgeous short film about this rural Indian communities benefiting from solar night education. What led Barefoot College to develop a night program? Could you expand on that? You did touch on it in the movie. And what were some of the extra benefits of the program?
Yeah, so the program is a unique one because it essentially starts with a community and a community education committee that form a localized school. And that school may be under a tree, it may be in an empty building, it may be in the back of somebody's house, because it's not really about where you learn, it's that you're learning. The teachers in this program are not formally trained in the system. They are trained by Barefoot College and have been since the start of the program. And so they are barefoot teachers in the same way we think about barefoot doctors and barefoot professionals in general, that you don't necessarily need to have a formal degree to have a big impact on your community. The problem of girls not attending school in very rural, remote communities is so deeply grounded in the need of those families for girls to participate and help just subsist in many cases. And the fact that the distances to getting to a formal school are far, and that means girls risking their own safety to get there. So the model came about trying to design a solution and a response to that would be localized. And instead of it taking the children or needing them to attend during the day, it takes place from 6:30 to 9:30 in the evening. So we have almost 100% attendance, and strangely, not just by children who don't get to go to a formal school, but also by children who do go to a formal school, but love the environment of the night schools because it's a very engaged, egalitarian place of inquisition. It feels very friendly and very familial because it's community-based. And then, of course, you have this buy-in from the teachers who are from those communities, and they know those children, right? They have a completely different relationship with them than a teacher, say, in an urban government school would with a large class. Those are the daughters and sons of their peers and people they know day in and day out. And I think we all know what value that can have in a rural setting. And then the curriculum itself is very different from the government curriculum in comparison. It certainly embodies all of the academic elements of the government curriculum, but it goes beyond that. It has always been a curriculum grounded in issue raising, in issues that face especially girls, because girls make up 80% of those attending in the evening. And so we really looked at things like citizenship, like gender sensitization, try to talk about things that are really relevant to girls that will help them through the acquisition of knowledge to combat the issues they face. And I'll give you one example of that. Our data shows us that girls who are able to, for instance, calculate crop value, understand issues around animal husbandry, have issues that help families earn more or think differently about their livelihoods, are far less likely to get married early. They have a value to their fathers and to the family that is suddenly perceived as going beyond the basic, and therefore they're valuable to keep around. So we've really built on that, and in the last 6 years, transitioned the curriculum to a fully rural STEM curriculum, but thinking about rural applications of science, technology, mathematics, and basic engineering principles. Now that has married itself to our solar engineering program, which Barefoot is incredibly well known for, which we've now scaled to 93 countries, I think, which has democratized the learning of solar and renewable energy technology through women who cannot read and write. So the digital night schools are powered by solar. They're powered by solar that women in those communities have installed. And then by partnering with people like Apple and Microsoft and World Reader, we've been able to integrate digital devices into those programs. Now, not to deliver basic pedagogy and curriculums, but to create and build discovery, innovation, and skill sets, and a tool for children and teachers to tell their own stories, to begin to understand that their stories matter and that the things that they experience in day-to-day life are actually heroic and worthy of telling those stories and sharing them beyond. So I really look at that technology integration as not so much a vehicle for delivering pedagogy, but much more an augmentation to enriching that and to preparing those kids for a largely digital reality that they face right now in India. And then lastly, I think it's important to say that we did some interesting R&D. Now, nobody thinks about NGOs as doing research and development. And in fact, when I used to ask donors to help us fund our research and development, they used to basically look at me like I was mad and say things to me like, oh, that's such a risk, you're going to do R&D. But in fact, it was a team of grassroots solar technicians who came up with the idea to build a digital projector that could be powered by solar one solar panel. They put an Apple TV in the middle of it. They designed a box that could be carried on your back, and it operates with one iPad mini. So in terms of costs, it's massively efficient. We now have digital Wi-Fi routers in all of the digital night school locations. So from Telonia, or even from here in Geneva, I can push curriculum to all of those digital night schools, which then shows up on the tablet, is then downloaded and able to be projected in that evening's classes, which they do on a simple white wall in the middle of a community.
Mm.
So, you know, we have the idea that technology means somehow a lot of money and a lot of complexity. In fact, I think there are some really amazing applications for that.
Mm-hmm. Breaking it down to simple technology to help them in their environment and learning things that are useful to them in their place of study. Thank you, Megan. I think we should move now to a new chapter of our discussion to talk about what's next. So what is the future post-COVID? Can we talk about what's to come, the aftermath? How are we going to, or how are you going to reimagine the future of girls' education in these developing economies? And is technology still going to be key to attracting and keeping girls in school? Would each of you like to say a few words about this, please? Why don't we start with you, Safeena?
Yeah, I definitely, and I kind of put it down somewhere in the questions, but I think, yes, we are trying to just sort of reimagine. And I think some of the questions are really, how do we get to that girl? How do we get to her faster? How do we optimize impact for her? How do we leverage technology for classroom observation, data collection, remote monitoring, training, certification, so that we can ramp up the quality of the talent that's on the ground trying to solve for these very, very, very difficult problems. There's obviously the whole issue of then, the edtech piece, the pedagogy piece, the delivery piece, but really the scaffolding around that for some of the bigger questions we really kind of want to think about. And I think the other thing we really want to see and reimagine is, how do we amplify the voice of that girl child using all of these tools? How does advocacy change? How does all of that change so that we are really punching above our weight when it comes to the issues of our women and girls?
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing that also keeps me up at night when I think about, because I think there are two ways you could go. You can either just be like, oh my God, technology is like the best, and let's just do everything via tech. Or there is, this complete resistance to technology, saying, oh my God, not everything can. But what is a sort of balanced approach? And I think that there's a tension there, because we also know that, technology unleashed, we're seeing that. We're seeing WhatsApp University. We're seeing all kinds of things. The technology, we also have to be wary. We cannot put blinkers on.
No.
I was listening to somebody who is running these business schools, in the West, in America and Canada and all the rest of it. And he started saying that I am changing my business school content because I can aggregate big data to see what is it that employers are looking for today. So I'm not going to teach strategy because they don't want their fresh employees to know strategy straight out of college. They want them to know how to make a budget. And I thought technology also, there's a risk of making it so reductive. And that in any case, so how do you be wary, but how do you embrace it where it's worth? But how do you reimagine the post-COVID world, but thoughtfully? You reimagine it, not coming kicking and screaming to the table, or like just putting the blinkers on and saying technology is like everything. But how do you thoughtfully design? Because we're also seeing our own children who are in online schools all day long are lethargic. They are just like letting things wash over them. The tools of today, the way the online school is not necessarily working for our children. It is still very instructional, and it's very kind of, or it's just doing quizzes and assessments. That's not necessarily how learning happens. And we're seeing that, a lot of children are dealing with anxiety, are dealing with stress because they're in online school for hours and end. So I think really we have to approach the table very, very, very thoughtfully. Tech, like anything else, is a tool. It can be extremely good, but it can also be extremely bad. and how we all come together to see all of it. And more than anything, I think how we reimagine with a strong gender lens. Because if we don't get our voice out there, it will be built for the default option, and the default option is always what we know. Who is the default option, right? So I think those are the things that I'm kind of thinking of when I say let's sit down and then reimagine is some of these pieces.
Yes, and what about, before you go, Safeena, to help us with a call for action to our participants here today? You know, they've been moved by what you've said. They are willing and interested in changing the course of girls' education as you are in the most underserved parts of the world. Would you have some words for our guests on how they can also help educate girls?
Yes, I think all of us, if we just keep her at the center of whatever we're thinking and designing, like I said, if she is the default option, believe me, whatever solution you're building is going to be better for everyone. And just anything that you're designing for, anything that you're doing R&D for, any problem you're trying to solve, just imagine that there is a vulnerable girl at the end of it, and whatever you come up with will work for everybody. And that would just be my call to action.
Thank you so much, Safeena.
Thank you, Safeena, for being with us today. We know you have to leave, but really thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, all my love, Atalante. I think you are fabulous, and I'm just so happy to see you. And really a big thanks to the Giving Women community. You guys are fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks, Safeena. So Valentina, what learning do you think from this time the Womanity Foundation will take beyond COVID-19 and continue it into its programs?
Well, I touched on it already. One element will be how we can use online and remote working to help our students, but also we were thinking at how we can support women and girls in Afghanistan throughout the pipeline until they really are in the position to get a job. So we are developing our program to move from high school to university and continue supporting them during university so that we can really be this bridge between their learning, their knowledge, their capacity, and the labor market inside and outside Afghanistan. And I totally agree with Safeena on the risk of technology, but for us, it's really using technology for a specific purpose. So it's also important, I think, to keep in mind what she said about the risk of using too much technology, of thinking that technology can replace everything. Because in a country like Afghanistan, it's of course very important that we don't only think what women can do if they cannot go out, but also how we give women's rights and the full participation to their communities and their lives and their country. Yeah.
Thanks, Valentina. Megan, would you like to speak about this too?
Sure. You know, we learned a lot during this period, I think, in a very fast moving way. And I think those learnings have, certainly for me and for my organization, my team, been very catalytic to our forward thinking. One of the things that we did when the schools were locked down in India and couldn't meet is we looked at what model of delivery we could keep going with so that children didn't miss the opportunity to learn. And one of those came to looking both at our ground partner network, because we deliver this model through hundreds of grassroots organizations in 14 states in India. And so looking to those localized community-based organizations for strength, for stability, and for sustainability of the programs. That is really important. And that was definitely a key to our ability to keep things going without interruption. So I think developing that network has become even a bigger priority for us. I think that we went to a family model. We immediately canvassed every single child in the program to find out who had access to one smartphone in their family. And we gave smartphones, thanks to Microsoft. We actually gave smartphones to every single child family who didn't have one. And what we started to understand was that our everyday push of content to those smartphones became a family learning experience, with parents suddenly who had not been involved really in the learning of their children becoming or having an opportunity to become involved. And so with World Reader, we released a library of books that would hopefully catalyze reading between parents and children to strengthen the outcomes in that period. And then we went to some really funny old-fashioned technologies like IVR, which is essentially text messaging. Could we prompt people for learning? Could we do quizzes? Could we manage to measure, engagement through SMS, which had a brilliant effect? So I think the way forward is maybe not necessarily and to push the boundaries of tech. It's to actually think about the whole system of learning for a child, the comprehensive way that children learn, the environment in which they learn, the manner of information, who has influence on children to learn, and to look at how tech can touch each of those different actors and stakeholders in order to continue to push the idea of learning for children really forward. And then I guess lastly, it's about gender lens. So I have become passionately and firmly convinced that we really do need a gender lens on education, both on content and on delivery mechanisms for passing knowledge. We need to know how and why girls learn and what they want to learn and how they want to learn and how they see it, which we've kind of not really addressed in the education sector till now. So I think this is a very, very important thing now, and we're trying to use some AI and data analytics for us to understand how girls respond to different things so we can really fine tune and tailor that content into what will resonate with them.
Oh, absolutely. That I would say in a nutshell that that's a lot of hope for the future, ladies. And I just to all of you, thank you so much. And you've really raised our awareness about the challenges that you and your organizations face. And you've also shown us how technology can at least help or aid to alter the course of a girl's education. And how does it do that? It keeps them in school and their brothers in school. And by your actions and by the work of your NGOs, you've given girls access, agency, autonomy, and authority over their lives. And these innovative solutions are all found by, to take Megan's word, keeping the gender lens on, and Safeena, what you said, listening to the needs of the students and their families. And then entire communities are benefiting from these actions in so many regions of the world. So I'm going to close it here, and I'm going to say to the audience, it's your chance now to ask your questions, and over to you, Philippine, for the Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
So I saw that there was already a few questions in Q&A, but please don't hesitate to raise your hands if you would like to ask a question. There's one question out of Australia. Ziada Toki would like to be involved in your organization, Valentina. So maybe you could liaise directly with Ziada to see if you could connect, and she would like to help Afghanistan out of Australia. We have a question for a more general question for the panelists, maybe to a little bit discuss on a few things on how can girls play a bigger role in influencing what how tech is developed, and how they could shape the future, and how this work could support low-income countries. So this is more general questions on how actually you are working with Apple and these companies, Megan. So you're already probably bringing some input to these companies on girls and education. Mm-hmm. You want to say a word about this?
Sure. I think, I think the two questions are related. So Laura has asked a wonderful question about sustainability of programs and about how we use the resources and indeed, how do you move towards sustainability? And then Chloe has asked a question about how do we get girls to play a bigger part in being able to develop that tech and have a voice in developing that tech. And I think these two things are not disconnected, and they speak really distinctly to a real passion of mine, which is systems change partnerships, which is around bringing government, private sector, and social innovation organizations together, because they have a lot to learn from each other and we have a lot to share with each other. I think one of the things that has been the hallmark of Barefoot's partnership with Apple has certainly been, I'm quite sure that Apple didn't necessarily think they had that much to learn from us at the beginning. However, I would say we did understand we had a lot to learn from them, and not just about the technology, but also about just lots of things to do with scale and about how to do scale well. But I think what has happened is that we have co-created together our program for 5 years. And that has been extraordinary, because being able to move private sector to understand the importance of designing technology with and for the rural poor, instead of in a distilled white lab in Silicon Valley, is absolutely critical. And if you can even imagine it, in India, most of the large tech players do not ever go in the villages to find out whether their tech is viable or interesting or usable. You know, there are a million things I could say about what Barefoot has done in the last few years in looking at those interfaces for the rural poor and for those without literacy, as a capability to engage with technology. But it's just to say that I think those two things are related, because I think that's a huge market, right? And so largely tech providers overlook that market, the bottom of the pyramid market, when it comes to thinking about software and comes to thinking about tech applications that link rural people to livelihoods and other kinds of opportunities. So I think there's a real synergy there about sustainability of programs and sustainability of collaborations, but it comes from a willingness to partner, a willingness to co-create together, really what you're going to do together, and a willingness to leave your ego at the door and put the objectives you'd like to get to together at the fore of that design process.
Mm-hmm.
Chloe or Laura, if you want to add something, don't hesitate to
Maybe
unmute.
Valentina.
Well, I want to add something, because from a smaller perspective and the perspective humanity works, also we need to have more women in this position. And that's why we're training women, because if they can be in the designing table, in the company, inside the company, working with, with the developers, etc., they can be the change themselves. So they don't need us to help them. They can do this themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So did you want to ask Chloe if she wanted to add something?
Yeah, maybe Chloe or Laura wanted to comment on, because as they were asking the questions, you wanted to... No?
Hi, it's Laura here. I'm from the Humanity Foundation as well, just for transparency. Megan, it's fascinating, the model you created at Barefoot, but it's a smaller question, but I was very curious on how do you do with the cost of data? Because, I mean, there's the access, but there is also, again, part of the sustainability conversation, like how people can continue get access to the technology. And I understand that from what you said, like iPad mini is not a lot if you think about it from our standards, but you think from a rural village in India, even as iPad mini is a lot of money.
It's
so
huge.
How do you do with the cost related?
There are three things that keep poor people poor, sadly. One of them is the cost of data, another's the cost of access to energy, and the third one is the cost of nutritional food. And so that's our trap right there. I think that in India, we are really lucky, actually, because the cost of data has fallen tremendously thanks to Reliance Industries and the launch of something called Geo, which was a smartphone and a data package combination that was designed actually to capture the bottom of the pyramid user. I think that in Africa, we have other challenges because mobile phone companies' access to internet are still very much in the hands of the mobile phone companies, and they are mini monopolies everywhere you go. I'm living for the day that those micro satellites are able to give universal data access at inexpensive rates, but yes, it remains a real problem. However, when we look at the statistics, it is remarkable how much data is used by men in the developing world in very poor communities for access to things like pornography. So there's another voice in me that sort of says, actually, if it has enough value to you, no matter how resource stretched you are, you will find a way to get yourself there. And I think it's also then our job to create the value proposition for that, right? For families. And that starts with women being digitally literate and being able to have access to digital tools, because then they will use it in very different ways that unlock learning and economic opportunity and other educational opportunities and networking amongst themselves, from which great strength comes. So I think, it's this balance of that space.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I had one question on my side, because I read even in Europe, we had all these issues of the girls at home who were sexually harassed and who were in danger. And I was wondering, is thanks also through the communication you could put in place to educate the girls, could you use also these networks to find ways to protect them, or to that they could share what was happening to them, or to find help?
Valentina, do you want to talk to that, or I can speak to that, because we had a pretty dramatic learning in that space?
Well, I have only a quick comment to add here, and for us, it's more leaving the conversation open, giving access to us, so that girls can communicate with us. But we normally don't really deal with such topics. We let just the conversation open, and we react when there is something that we need to to help the girls with. But we didn't have big cases in Afghanistan with our students.
In India alone, we had 146% increase in domestic violence.
During the pandemic?
During the pandemic. That was from, we measured and we were tracking basically from the beginning of April until the end of June.
Oh, dear.
I cannot tell you how severe. And that has been echoed in the Pacific Islands, in Latin America, in Africa, in almost every country. It's not just violence, it's sexual predatory behavior and a variety. It's on the entire spectrum of abuse, just because of the living conditions, the size of physical spaces, and the lockdown ramifications. And so I have a wonderful young woman who worked for me named Sanjana. And Sanjana was so passionate about gender, she decided to spend 2 weeks calling the helplines available in India, as if she had been a victim of domestic violence or abuse. And she could not get through in 2 weeks. And she has the data from the number of calls she made every 15 minutes, nearly 10, 12 hours a day she was calling. So that shows you how inadequate our support systems are for that. So as a result, she developed a kind of survival kit curriculum, which we were able to deliver by SMS. And then we did a series of 1-minute videos that were very low data usage that we could push out to women and girls about how to counter that. And I think we reached 1.2 million with the videos. Wow. And that cost us $3,000. It wasn't expensive. Mm-hmm. And so I just think, again, the gender lens, everything that happens in the world, from climate to the pandemic, has a different and disproportionate effect on women and girls. And step one is recognizing that, owning that, understanding it. And step two is, how do we start to solve for that, each and every one of us in the ecosystem? And you hope that in coming together, everybody's collective action has such an important pushback against those things.
You have some of the participants who will probably reach you on a one-to-one, Megan. I have Laura Somogi, who would be interested to get in contact on this topic.
Of course, of course.
So,
really happy to hear from everybody.
So that you know, the participants, you will receive a follow-up emails with the contact details of the speakers, so you will have a chance also to interact directly with the speakers and follow up on this discussion. A little bit, there's one question in the chat which I think is interesting also about donators. Are you finding that actually in this, that at the moment the Western donors are less generous since COVID, as there's a lot of massive inequalities in digital education in countries closer to home, such as US, France, UK, even Switzerland, and that maybe your partners might choose to prioritize, which would not benefit your organizations. Have you seen some inequalities, or do you think it's the contrary, that people feel more concerned given the circumstances?
Oh, no, certainly philanthropy is going through a very, I would say, a sort of transitional moment right now. When you have the kind of geopolitical issues that have been so prevalent, whether that's interruption of elections, authoritarian governments, places where there are huge human rights abuses, and indeed manipulation of messaging and data and facts, I will say. I think you have, tremendous need, right? You have need in your own backyard, you have need in further places away. And so those choices become hard for people. And that certainly affects our ability to access funds. I think this is one of the reasons why it's so important, as Safeena said, in your work in the sector, to be smart, to be efficient, to be really looking at bringing partners together. And I think that takes partners on the other side who are happy to be part of a collective and don't need to own individually a particular program. That's been quite classically a philanthropic Achilles heel, is that a foundation wants to own an entire program. Well, first of all, what we do today to address these systemic issues means multiple parts need to be addressed in a system, right? And that means multiple donors need to come to the table who have a commitment to those different parts. So you're talking about working today versus 10 years ago in a very, very different way in terms of how we aggregate resources and how we deploy those resources. And so I do think it's been impacted. I think never before has the individual donor been so important. That's a message, I think, really important to the Giving Women group. Ati, you want to interrupt me?
No, I don't want to interrupt you. Continue, and I'll add on to you.
Yeah, okay. I think that is such an important message. We are all sure we don't have enough to do something big, but it's the individual donations that in this period of the pandemic have allowed us to do the videos, have allowed us to divert and come up with a new curriculum, have allowed us to communicate to the outside world. Somebody asked a communications question, have allowed us to support our communications outward. These things are absolutely transformational to the work, right? And so, and if we match 2 people together or 3 people together and we say, okay, look, with this amount that the 3 of you want to give us, we can do this. So I think there's a real opportunity as a donor to be much more engaged in co-creating the solutions and owning those solutions, following them through, being really part of what's happening. And on the flip side, we have to understand that collective action is absolutely more powerful right now and moves the dial faster than anything else.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, and you just said it in the last part, because it's not only bringing the donors together and having them commit funds as a group to an outcome. So, and every step of the outcome. But I think one of the things that I always find in these panel discussions that we have is also the sharing of knowledge and experience, which can be then transmitted. So something that Barefoot College is doing could be something that could be very valuable to womanity in Afghanistan, you know, sending out these messages to help these young women who are survivors of violence or whatever. Well, maybe that's something that could be. So I think that partnership goes beyond the giving, it goes in the sharing of our knowledge, because and I've said it now and people have heard it many times. I believe in the power of one. That's why I think the call to action is so important. We can all make a difference, but the magic is really created by the many, the coming together. And that's why I think hearing, you know, there's so much that you've told us today, all of you, and it's so enriching in terms of, okay, this is the way we need to move forward. That the coming together of this information and this knowledge and this experience is really, really valuable. So I just like to, as I've got the floor now, I'd like to thank all of you. Linda, you've done an amazing job. Philippine, thank you. And thank you for sharing all that information. It's amazing. Thank you.
I can't think of a better way to end this discussion. Thank you, Atalanti, for your words. It summed it up perfectly. And I think that with this, we are closing our session unless we have some other burning questions. Philippine?
I would like to thank Megan, Valentina, Atalanti,
yes, of course. Thank you to our panelists.
Can I leave you with one thought?
Please.
And it's really to build a little bit on what Safeena said. You know, we each as women are so blessed to have had the experience to learn, just to learn, and to learn how to learn. And if you even only give that experience to one other girl, you've made such an amazing difference. And I think we just forget that so often. We hear the numbers, we think about the millions, but actually, you know, it only takes one Jacinta Ardern. It only takes one Kamala Harris.
Here we go.
We've got to really, each and every one of us as women, if we've had a right to an education, give one girl that right and that leg up. And it's not expensive. And what she'll do with it will amaze you. And that's just, so my call to action is that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very inspiring.
Thank you both. And thank you to Giving Women and Giving Women Zurich for putting this together and allowing us to have this conversation.
Thank you. See you soon.
Wonderful rest of the day, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Valeria. Hi, Valeria.
Hi, Valeria.
Thank you so much. That was fabulous.
This will be recorded and posted in the next few days. So thank you all so much. Have a good afternoon.